Oh, is he there as well?
Yeah, walking down. Yeah. You're doing the sound?
I'm just doing the recording.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, is he teaching or just teaching an end now? Or we don't know.
I think it's teaching and now maybe the end or.
Cool. Actually, I was not going to be, but I am here. Might go to the little girls this time. What a good encouragement. Thank you. Thank you.
No people yet.
Thank you. So then, good morning, everyone. For the session, once more, at least in the way that I do it, that the first part of the session is focusing meditation, and the second part of the meditation is related to the text, Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and the chapter that we're covering at the moment, enthusiastic perseverance, delight in doing virtue. And the meditation associated with that today, meditation on death, the benefits of recalling to mind death, and disadvantages of not recalling to mind death. So then, just to sit comfortably and cultivate positive motivation for even just this first part of the meditation session, the part associated with focusing our mind, keeping our mind in the present moment. And if we're able to do this well, apply ourselves for just a few minutes really of meditation, focusing the mind, letting go of memories and plans for the future, not being drawn away by other distractions, including sounds inside the room and outside. That if we're able to do this well, focusing the mind, it prepares our mind well for the main body of the meditation, and of course for the teaching session, and then it can also influence this afternoon with the session after lunch, recalling to mind Lama Zopa. It was Lama Zopa Rinpoche's birthday. So then if you have a method that you already use to focus your mind, then to apply that method. And if you don't, then one method that can be used is to maintain an awareness of the sensation of the air as it passes in through the nostrils and passes out. And trying to maintain the awareness of that, the sensation of the air passing in and going out, while at the same time, with diligence, alertness, be aware of the arisal of the different distractions. To note these, not get caught up in them, nor suppress them, just to note them, and then bring the mind back to the breath. So then, like this, we just continue in this way for the first part of this session. So then now, with the main body of the meditation, is the meditation on death. Firstly, the benefits of recalling to mind death, and then secondly, disadvantages of not recalling to mind death. Particularly here in relation, it's really got to do with the sense of the end of one's own life. So then, in relation to the benefits of recalling to mind death, firstly, it's said that it tends to make one's actions positive, virtuous. Now, of course, we have to have a certain perspective on this because there's a saying that goes, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. Has a certain perspective there if you think of your death. But if you have a sense of the real possibility there is existence after this life, and that there is such a phenomena as karma, or whatever thou sowest, thou reapest. And also, even without that, if you have a predisposition that understands, even if you don't believe in future lives, that you understand that real happiness comes, even in this life, through creating virtue. You have that perspective. Then, when you recognize, when you get a sense that death is definite and that it may come at any time, and somehow that touches your heart, it directs your mind in the positive direction. And we look at the example of Prince Siddhartha, who became the Buddha. He left the palace on the basis of seeing sickness, aging, death. Leading to a focusing of the mind, the importance within his mind from this experience that he would lead his life in a positive way, create virtue in some way, try to find a path. So the recollection of death, the seeing of death, directed him, made his actions positive. Then also in relation to Milarepa, who was responsible for the deaths of many of his relatives on the basis of his engaging in black magic. Then when he later on, he saw the remains of his mother, awareness of death, and it led to incredible change in his life, powerful remorse for what he had done. Turn his life around and engage in virtue and abandon non-virtue. So you could say the recollection of death is a virtue maker, that which brings happiness. So it actually recollection of it leads to the rise of a kind of fear, a wholesome fear, I fear that I might die having not done something beneficial with my life. Then also recollection of death makes our actions not only positive, tending to the positive, but makes those actions stronger when we engage in them, more energized to do the virtue. So it says that just like the elephant's footprint is the supreme of footprints, the most definite and distinct, when it goes into the soft ground, then likewise in general the meditation on death is the one that has strong influence on the mind, making the actions more powerful. Or like they say, that ploughing in India, at least after the rainy season, in the autumn time, the ploughing done in autumn time is the best ploughing because the earth is still moist but not saturated. And so because we recall to mind death, it means that the mind is going to be less conditioned by the worldly dharmas of the craving after worldly happiness, but because there's a tendency to see how shallow that is and how we can't take with us our possessions. And you can't take with you your partner. And you can't take with your body, or fame, or praise. All has to be left behind. So with that understanding, then it allows the actions to become more powerful because it's not conditioned by the mind craving after wealth or fame or whatever. Then it's also beneficial because it can condition our mind throughout this life to practice virtue. We can see this as the starting point of the Buddha's teaching. First teaching was the Four Noble Truths, and with that was the teaching on impermanence and death. So like introduction to Buddhism. And then throughout the teaching the Buddha gave very much the theme of impermanence and death. The phenomena of our everyday experience change from moment to moment. And they end. This body has a certain life period. We don't know how long we will be on this earth. But its characteristic is that it's impermanent. And consciousness separates from the body, and that's death time comes. so said with the Buddhist teachings to live with this awareness of death every morning, to recall this could be the last day of my life. Then the last teaching the Buddha gave was teaching on death, his passing away. His disciples seeing the end of his life was the teaching. And so the more we're able to, allow it to permeate our mind when we first hear the Dharma, we continue with the Dharma, and also as we approach the end of this life. Awareness of death is something very positive. Best antidote, they say, awareness of impermanence is the best antidote to attachment. And that is the affliction which pervades our life. Anger comes and goes, but attachment tends to pervade all the time. And attachment arises on the basis of seeing things as being permanent. If we understand, have the realization of phenomena being impermanent, we don't form attachment. Then also benefit, of course, we will, throughout the remainder of this life, create virtue, the source of happiness, condition our life with happiness, and then at the death time, we won't die with regret. Then disadvantages of not remembering death. If we don't remember death, if we don't remember impermanence, there's a tendency to engage in the eight worldly dharmas, the craving, and cultivate attachment to phenomena. And if the mind is full of attachment, it isn't Dharma. And so it said with this, if we don't recall the mind's death and impermanence, then we don't remember the Dharma. You're drawn away by all the other things in our life, by the influence of other people. And then it can be that you just forget about the Dharma, or something I used to do. Then also, even if we remember the Dharma, if we don't recall to mind death, there's a tendency to not practice the Dharma. We might recall it, but we don't actually engage in the practice of Dharma. And then even if we remember the Dharma and we practice the Dharma, if we don't recall to mind death continuously, there's a tendency not to practice Dharma purely, meaning that even when we're engaging in Dharma practice, the mind is conditioned by the worldly Dharmas, that is, craving after praise and fame and power, craving after material possessions, and pleasure. And also the mind, which is also obsessed with protecting whatever we have, whatever our ego empire has, we have in our ego empire, and we're also focused on protecting that, fearful of losing those things. Losing the awareness that we're going to be separated from those things anyway, because we don't remember death. We forget that's reality, we will be separated from them. So therefore we engage in them. And so whatever Dharma practice is engaged in, as I say, is not purely engaged in because it's conditioned by the worldly Dharma. And so then also, even though we may remember Dharma, and we may practice the Dharma, and we may even practice it purely without bringing our mind back to the awareness of death, we don't practice consistently. We get drawn away constantly by various distractions and so on. So other things arise. So we practice, but there's a tendency not to do it consistently, not with that energy that the awareness of death gives us to practice virtue. So there's a fluctuation according to our mind state. And so it's enlikened how it is that if you're trying to make water boil in a pot and you put the gas on, but then you turn it off and you turn it back on, doesn't matter how many times you have it going, if you don't get it to the right temperature consistently, it's not going to boil. And then if we don't remember death, then the tendency is that we create a lot of non-virtue in this life and, say, waste this life. Particularly engage in laziness of laziness and laziness of being attracted to meaningless activity, but also laziness of discouragement, so that at the death time we die with a mind full of regret for not having used the life to engage in Dharma practice. So then, just in conclusion, though, that may be understandable aversion to be thinking about impermanence and death. It's understandable that we would feel that way. But if we're able to work through that and bring awareness of death and impermanence, then we're best placed to be able to use our life in the best way to bring ourselves happiness in this life and future lives, and also, of course, to be of benefit to others. And so then, just in conclusion, to dedicate what are the positive results from meditating in this way towards having the kind of mind which prioritizes the Dharma, and particularly here the understanding of attending the teachings, and tuning into the teachings and gaining the best that we possibly can from these teachings in order to benefit ourselves and others. Okay, so thank you.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's switch this off.